Garner of Great British Speakers, and I'm here today chatting with the entrepreneur, former dragon, and secret millionaire, Piers Linney. Hi, Piers. How are you today?
Hi, Jane. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no, thanks for joining us. I'm really chuffed to get to talk to you face to face. I know we've had a little chat before. But before we get into your speaking, which is what we're here to talk about, really, I'm really nosy, so I'd like to know more about your background. Tell us a bit about your early life.
So my mum's from Barbados, proper sort of Windrush generation. Came over recruited in the 60s to be a nurse. And my dad is he's passed away sadly, was a Mancunian, working class Mancunian lad from Cheetham Hill in northern Manchester. And he was quite bright, went to Cambridge, came back again in those days. And he worked in the sort of ceramics industry. So I was actually born in Stoke-on-Trent and then moved to sunny Lancashire when I was about 9. And we moved up there, and I grew up in a small mill town, which is quite interesting. If you look like me, so I became quite good at judo, and then so the nearest civilization really, we sort of went there quite a lot. It was a lot of people I grew up with thought, oh, Manchester, that's a long way away, but I spent a lot of my time in Manchester as well, and also went to university there. But I'm sort of a mixed race, and I'd say that my upbringing was sort of comfortable. It wasn't sort of I never talk about the fact that I sort of dragged myself out of the gut. It wasn't like that at all. My parents were probably my mentors and role models, really.
So then, because a lot of people who do motivational speaking, it's almost that rags to riches story, isn't it? So yours isn't that. But what was the spark then into your first venture, and what made that all start?
Yeah, so my story is an interesting one though, because so I imagine me just shortcut it. So I grew up in a mill town, failed my 11 plus, did my O-levels twice, my A-levels twice, went to a comprehensive school. I ended up being a city lawyer and investment banker at Credit Suisse when it was solvent. So my journey.
Tell me about that journey.
My journey is quite rare, so that's why I got picked to do certain things. But just very quickly, so my first foray into business was I grew up in Lancashire when it snowed. Yeah, it covered your car basically. So on Sundays, news agents didn't deliver, and I had a weekday paper round 6 days a week. I earned £5, showing my age now. And my one was Sunday. My dad, I think I can't remember exactly, said, "I don't want to get out of bed and get the paper. You get it for me." So I rode down to the town centre on my BMX, picked up the paper, brought it back. He gave me a bit of a tip, and I realised there's a business here, but I couldn't buy the papers from the news agents clearly because there was no margin. So I bought them from the wholesaler, disintermediated the local news agent. Delivered on Sunday mornings, harder work, longer round, probably took me 3 or 4 hours all in, and I made 20 quid. So I realized that through having an idea, a niche, solving a problem, quite a lot of hard work, I could generate in a small way some wealth, and I bought a much nicer.
So how did that go down in a small town?
Well, it was great. It was great. But in my town, though, when people said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to go into business." So when my school was doing work placements, they say to me, do you want to go to local joiners, the kitchen manufacturer, the building company? I said, no, I want to work in Barclays. And they looked at me like I was insane. So I had to write a letter to the local Barclays myself, the manager, to get a placement there. And I got a placement there. They offered me a job, funnily enough. So, and when I said I want to go, everyone looked at me like I was insane. And I said, what should I study? And everyone said, accounting. And that's why I ended up doing a law and accounting degree. I enjoyed law, but I thought I better do accounting because that's how you go into business. So although I was surrounded by entrepreneurs, they were all kind of making money with their hands. No one really knew what it was that I understood what I was interested in.
So then you worked in the city for a long time?
No, so I went to Manchester University and then I applied to law, 60 applications, didn't get a look in anywhere. And I always say that on my journey, people always gave me a couple of chances. That's why everyone else should as well, is that my one law firm out of 68 gave me a placement and I managed to qualify as a lawyer in the city. But when I was qualified, I did venture capital. So I'm actually a qualified lawyer. I did venture capital and leveraged buyouts, corporate finance. But I realized that I didn't want to spend my life dotting I's and crossing T's. I wanted to be, we did venture. I wanted to be the investor or the entrepreneur doing the deal. This is pre-tech. So a friend of mine said to me, you should go into investment banking. And I looked at him and I said, I remember that to this day, what's investment banking? Because where I came from, I didn't have a clue what investment banking was or really was corporate finance really. I kind of studied it, but didn't understand it. So I then managed through, another quite long story, is to get a job in the city with another bank, then called BZW, Barclays de Zoete Wed, kind of Barclays Capital now. And that's for another group of people giving me a chance. And I became a banker. But I was only there from 97 to sort of 2000 on the rise of the dot-com wave. And that's when I left, took my bonus in 2000 and went into, started my first business, raised some money and started a dot-com. And I haven't worked for anybody since.
It's always the way, though, isn't it? Once you start working for yourself, it's very difficult to move back into other businesses. So you were a successful entrepreneur at an early age. What sort of age were we talking then?
So now I'm sort of 26, probably 30 when I left. I was earning more money than I knew what to do with. I was bought my first car on a debit card, so it was just bonkers that, I was earning more money as a bonus than my parents put together in a whole year. So it was quite interesting how I transitioned from one to the other. But then when I started, say that again, sorry?
What sort of business did you set up, the first one?
So the first ones were, the first ones were an intermediary between pharmaceutical companies and medical practitioners. So it was online research and e-detailing, prescription habits, testing adverts for drugs in medical journals, etc., etc. So it kind of worked at this time. It wasn't one of those dot-coms. It was a bit too early because the online experience wasn't great.
No.
And then we couldn't raise more money because of the dot-com crash. So luckily my co-founder's parents were quite wealthy, so they carried on with it. I actually saw him in Miami about a month ago for the first time, about 20 years. It's crazy. And so that kind of rumbled on, and then eventually they sold it. Didn't make much money out of it. And then I thought, what the hell do I do? Because my bridge back to the city had been incinerated because they'd fired everyone because of the dot-com crash. So as an entrepreneur, what do you do? When you can't go backwards, you have to go forward. So what do? I'm this mixed race lad in the city. I've got these skills. I'm a lawyer, I'm a banker. I've got the CV. I've got the names of my CV. And I did a quick. I was asked to help believe it or not, a dance music company set up. So DJ management, record label, digital rights. Did that for a while. But then I thought, what do I do? And the guy that trained me as a lawyer had a sort of a internet kind of age 2000 kind of vintage venture capital fund. He said, can you sort it out? So I did. And then I took that regulated vehicle, corporate finance vehicle, and created a kind of estate agent for hedge fund money. So finding US hedge fund money and bringing it and putting it into deals in the UK, the US, and Germany. And that was quite tough going, but I learned a lot. And then from that's when I started making my first money, really. Because then I was investing in businesses, starting them, side hustles, helping friends do things. And some of them became quite successful and quite large, 40 million of revenue, 200 people, making millions of pounds. And then one day, when I was sitting in a meeting thinking, what are these board of directors doing? I thought, I can do this myself. So I became an operator and I stepped in. So I can operate. Try not to these days, but I spent quite a few years actually operating reasonably large, mid-sized companies.
Okay.
But always into technology, media and telecoms. That's where, and now I'm in additive manufacturing, make 3D printed mountain bikes. And now I'm sort of starting a new company in AI.
Right. Okay, Piers. So you were a busy boy throughout your teens, your 20s. Tell me about your TV career. When did that start, and how on earth did you get to become a dragon? Did they come calling?
So I was quite successful in business, and there weren't many people like me really that had my background, my kind of schooling, education, and then ended up in the city. So I was kind of spotted and ended up in some magazines, like lists of the most influential Black Britons and various things like that. And through that, the good old TV researchers sort of found me somehow. And I was approached to do The Secret Millionaire. This is like in 2011. So in The Secret Millionaire, it was one of those things where, it's on once and you see it or you don't. But that was quite a big experience in the life. So I ended up spending most of my time in a young offenders institution in Wolverhampton. And I knew kids that had been in trouble all my life, but I never realized that, there were so many young people in these institutions that just couldn't read. And I met a young lad there called Daniel, and he was in there 19 years old, 11 years, quite serious offences. There's a story to it, but, he got caught. And I said, I want to help him. They said, the producer said, you can't give the prisoners money. And I said, okay, when he comes out, I'm going to mentor him. So he came out and I mentored him. Not mollycoddled him, just a bit of direction, gave him a job for a while and helped him with his first sort of rent guarantee, the kind of thing a friendly uncle might have done. And he went on to work for me. I made him redundant, which was quite awkward. He started some businesses. I helped him get into IT, and he was very good at it. So if he was born in the right postcode, he would have been working in the city somewhere, doing whatever he wanted to do. in finance or technology. But because he was born in Wolverhampton, he never accessed the opportunity or the support or the confidence. Anyway, about 2 weeks ago, he messages me and he's earning nearly 100 grand a year now, got a family and a young son. So it just shows you what that diversion can do. Yeah, many years ago, 10 years down the line. So through The Secret Millionaire, I was approached to do Dragon's Den. So the first year I was kind of like, well, I'm not sure. And I was about 40 then. And it kind of went away. And the second they asked me again. And so there's a bit of a story to this. So the producers are chasing me saying, do you want to do it? And at the time, as you do, I was with Sir Richard Branson at his private game reserve in the Ulu Saba in the Kruger National Park in South Africa.
Oh, that's a name.
And I was thinking, who do I talk to about business and the media and the pros and the cons and how you stitch them together and does it work? And you know where this is going. So the obvious answer was Sir Richard. And this is not some made up backstory. It's actually happened. So he sat me down and said, "You're right." I goes, "Well, it's a bit of an issue." He goes, "What is it?" So I explained the whole backstory in Dragon's Den. And he sort of said to me, "Look, do it. People like you on TV and programs like that, you'd be good at it. You'd make a difference. I used to get on a plane for a decent TV spot. You should do it." And I said, "Okay, fine." And I walked away with my Corona, and he sort of dragged me back and said, when I said do it, call the producer back now, who I still know to this day. So he made me call the producer back and said, I'm in there and then. And that's where I ended up on Dragon's Den.
Oh, wow. And so your experience was a good one. I mean, I hear you had a really good, successful venture there as well, financially.
Yeah, I probably did the best deal ever on Dragon's Den. A lot of the information is not public, but if you've got children, you've probably come across Lost My Name, now called Wonderbly, the beautiful personalized children's content books. And I invested 100K for about 5%. And that was a £2 million valuation, which was the highest on Dragon's Den until some crypto nonsense in about 2021. Yeah. And then they went through a few ups and downs, but they sold out to a large private equity fund about 2 years ago now, and for tens and tens and tens of millions. So in terms of it being the real first tech deal, I'd say I did on that program, and the only one I'm really aware of where there was an investment, especially in tech, and then a proper exit. Mm. There are things that are still rumbling on, but so I like to think that I brought Dragon's Den into the modern age. Yeah, but I did 2 years.
Did you enjoy the whole experience?
Yeah, it's a great experience. I'm glad I did it for enough time. You don't want to be defined by it. I think that it's quite hard to do business on TV, because we both know running businesses that a lot of it's quite boring. It's admin. So that moment, that jeopardy of putting your dreams on a table and these people sat in chairs, decide yay or nay is a great moment to capture. Although it's not really what business is about, how it really works. I think there's an opportunity there to sort of, maybe I'm looking at do something a bit more modern, maybe on a different format. But it's been good to me in a way, because it opens doors. So I was a bit of a reluctant celebrity in some ways. Yeah. Although, and before COVID, people kind of recognised me. They're kind of like, "Oh, I know you. Don't you work in Barclays in Camden or something?" But, maybe let them think what they wanted. But during COVID, they couldn't record the program, so they reran lots of it. So suddenly, you're getting stopped in the streets again. But it is still amazing me to this day about how many people actually just recognise you wherever you go in the world, not just in the UK, because it's shown all over the world. So it opened doors for me. Probably the only mentor I've ever really had is Sir Ken Alissa, who's a Lord Lieutenant of Greater London.
I know him, yeah.
He's the guy with the sword, following the royal family around and organising coronations. Mm-hmm. And I had a drink with him a few days ago, but he said to me after the programme, he said, "Look, you can either go now to the opening of an envelope or a fridge, like celebrity stuff, or go serious." So I decided to go more serious. So I became the trustee of Nesta, UK's largest innovation agency, 600 million foundation for 6 years. I ended up on the board of British Business Bank during COVID. So all the bounce back loans and C-bills. I was on the board for 4 years during COVID. So we went from 12 billion to 90 billion. So you can imagine what that was like. And I advise Sky on diversity and inclusion. I advise it's not quite public, a very large UK-based automotive manufacturer on strategy, which is very interesting. So I do advise lots of big companies and some medium-sized companies, and I focused on that. So I always kind of went quiet for quite a while, really. But I've always kind of in the background championed small business entrepreneurship, startups, scale-ups as well, through my content and my activity. And a lot of the keynotes I do as well tend to focus on, diversity, inclusion, growth businesses, inspiring audiences and teams. So that's something I'm still very passionate about. And Dragon's Den has definitely opened doors. There's a downside to it. The people do know who you are, wherever you are, which can be quite annoying sometimes. But the pros definitely outweigh the cons.
Oh, that's good to hear. A good TV success story. So without wishing to embarrass you, I'm going to read out some of the recognition you've gained over your career. Are you ready for this? Top 20, I'm having to read this. Top 20 of Financial Times' list of the top 100 minority ethnic leaders in tech. Top 100 BAME leaders in business. JP Morgan sponsored Power List 2013 as one of the top 100 most influential Black Britons. And EY Entrepreneur Leader of the Year at the first Black British Business Awards. Well, absolutely extraordinary. I mean, there's so much sort of critical acclaim that you've had, and it comes from modest beginnings. You weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. So what do you think we're doing wrong in this country? Do you think everybody's getting the same opportunities? I mean, we were talking about your secret millionaire experience earlier. What can we do better?
So a lot of the work that I do, especially with companies like Sky and some of the other stuff I do privately, and I've also found, well, as a founding trustee of a charity called the Leto Foundation. So one of the big issues with it, so I'm a great example of social mobility. You look at my parents and then me and what I've done, both professionally and as an entrepreneur. And so my view is that, ambition is evenly distributed. Yeah? No matter where you go, people have ambitions. And increasingly now, because of social media and the internet, is that anyone can see what other people are doing. You never used to see, all you could ever see before was what was going on in your street or your town. Whereas now you can see what people do all over the world. So ambition is evenly distributed. What is not evenly distributed, which means you can't connect ambition with opportunity sometimes, is the social capital you require. And that's got three real pillars. So one is access to capital, access to support, and access to networks. Now, if you come from the right background and you're quite lucky, you have all this stuff. You don't even think about it; it's just there. You don't even acknowledge or worry about it. You have access to some capital. You have networks. Your dad knows somebody. And my daughters could ask me about to do anything